On Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, Suga of BTS once again caught public attention after sharing a casual photo on his personal social media account showing himself posing in a quiet, shaded corner of an open park with a background of lush trees and soft natural lighting. But what drew attention was not only Suga's relaxed pose in a gray hoodie and loose black pants that emphasized the laid-back mood of the scene, but also the presence of a person unintentionally captured in the background, standing slightly turned away from the camera and appearing to hold something resembling a compact camera or phone, which then prompted a response from Suga himself in a follow-up post a few hours later where he reshared the photo along with a light and curious comment about who was behind him at that moment. And although the post did not carry any dramatic tone or spark concern, netizens quickly began discussing the detail across forums and social media, with some treating it as a common occurrence in public spaces while others found it intriguing since Suga rarely responds directly to unintentional details in his photos. And this eventually created a small wave of online interaction among fans who examined the image more closely, looking for additional clues about the exact location and Suga's activity that day. From the perspective of a celebrity known for being private and seldom commenting on trivial matters in his daily life, the lighthearted response drew attention and suggested that Suga had been in a relatively relaxed and open mood in recent days amidst his privately kept schedule. While the park location featured in the photo was quickly identified by some local fans in LA as a public space often used by residents for walks or weekend relaxation, and Suga's presence in such a place without noticeable security or crowds indicated that his visit was carried out quietly and did not attract major public attention, also implying that he was likely enjoying his free time privately outside of any official professional agenda or promotional activities. And from the simple yet sincere composition of the photo, a sense of a global musician trying to appreciate ordinary aspects of life emerged, allowing himself to blend naturally into the environment without the burden of high public expectations, which usually come with his public engagements, also portraying a very human and grounded image that the public may not always witness from the stage or screen. And in this context, Suga's brief remark about the unknown figure behind him can be understood as a part of a reflective and spontaneous curiosity, not as an attempt at dramatization or speculation, but merely a personal moment arising from a normal everyday situation. And from here it becomes clear that the interaction between celebrities and their audiences today is no longer always one-directional or exclusive, but rather more fluid and rooted in daily life, where small things like a background element in a photo can become the starting point of a casual public conversation that still reflects the closeness between the artist and his fans. And in this warm atmosphere, Suga's presence in an open space in Los Angeles becomes a kind of symbol of the personal pause taken by an artist to reconnect with the simplicity of life that may have been overlooked amidst the noise of stages and global spotlights. The day following Suga's post quickly turned into a period of quiet observation among his followers as more people began to take interest not only in the original photo but in the natural surroundings and subtleties within it, prompting several fan accounts to share their own pictures and stories of similar locations in Los Angeles where they believe the photo may have been taken, not with the intention of uncovering secrets or stirring speculation, but more as a communal activity rooted in appreciation for the candid nature of the post. And as the online discussion remained respectful and grounded, a handful of locals who had happened to be in the same park that weekend shared glimpses of their experiences which occasionally aligned with the timeline of Suga's presence, reinforcing the perception that he had indeed chosen a public yet peaceful spot for his quiet outing. And while no further comments came from Suga himself, the natural course of conversation among fans shifted toward admiration for his ability to maintain a grounded lifestyle, even in a city known for its constant media buzz, with many noting how the artist's subtle interaction had brought attention to the beauty of engaging in everyday activities without spectacle. And as the photo continued to circulate without edits or exaggeration, it became a point of reflection for some fans who expressed their appreciation for the way Suga often shares pieces of his life that are unfiltered and intentionally simple, offering a break from the curated nature of celebrity content. In general and meanwhile, industry observers in South Korea and the US alike quietly took note of how the moment had unfolded as an organic interaction rather than a publicity strategy, highlighting a distinct pattern in Suga's public persona that balances high-profile artistic achievements with an understated personal presence. And with no announcements made regarding official appearances or press engagements, many assumed that this period was likely a personal hiatus or a short-term retreat taken between projects, which aligns with his previous statements about valuing rest and quiet time. And from a broader cultural perspective, the incident offered a rare instance where a global artist momentarily shifts attention away from performance and toward presence, reminding many of the simplicity in being rather than doing. And as the weekend came to a close, no new developments emerged regarding the identity of the person in the background, which did not lead to disappointment or further questions, but rather served as a gentle closure to a brief moment of shared attention. And in that stillness, the lack of a dramatic follow-up actually emphasized the authenticity of the entire episode, as fans gradually returned to their usual routines while leaving behind a digital thread marked by kindness, observation, and a mutual understanding that not everything shared publicly must lead to conclusions or narratives. And perhaps that was the most meaningful takeaway of all, that in today's interconnected yet often overstimulated media environment, a single image posted with sincerity can invite thousands into a moment of pause without needing to say much else. And in that way, Suga once again reminded many not through performance or grand gestures but through subtlety, that even fleeting interactions can hold quiet significance when they are rooted in presence and honesty. And so the image remained, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a snapshot of an afternoon, lived fully, if briefly, in the open air of Los Angeles. In the days that followed, Suga's photo and the lighthearted comment he had made about the figure in the background gradually faded from the trending topics, yet it left behind a soft imprint on his digital presence, as fans began to shift their attention from speculation to deeper appreciation of how he interacts with the world around him during quieter moments, with several fan blogs and community pages reflecting on the way Suga's brief gesture had sparked such a calm and grounded conversation among fans without needing any promotional push or dramatic context. And the simplicity of that interaction led some followers to revisit his older personal posts, noticing a recurring theme of stillness, minimalism, and quiet observation, which they began to associate as part of his personal rhythm of living. A rhythm that contrasts yet harmonizes with the fast-paced demands of being a member of one of the most recognizable music groups in the world. And in that contrast, there seemed to be an emerging dialogue among fans about the importance of allowing public figures like Suga the space to exist without expectation, to share without explanation, and to move through everyday spaces as individuals, not as spectacles. And during that same period, Suga was also seen briefly entering a small coffee shop in the Silver Lake neighborhood, not through paparazzi lenses but through the account of a local barista who mentioned casually serving a quiet customer who fit his description and carried himself with a low-key energy, wearing a cap and dark hoodie similar to the outfit in the photo. And though the post did not gain massive attention, it added another layer of gentle realism to the ongoing sense that Suga was simply taking a moment for himself in the city, walking its streets, visiting its corners, and letting his days unfold without orchestration. And the fact that no new updates emerged from his management or media outlets only served to strengthen the perception that his time in LA was entirely personal, free from branding or scheduling, and instead filled with ordinary decisions like choosing a park bench or walking into a local cafe. And as the online discussion cooled, it left a more introspective mood within segments of the fandom, especially among those who had been following Suga not only for his music but for the way he often portrayed a quieter side of fame, one that values space and authenticity over visibility. And in that silence, many fans found a form of comfort, recognizing that even in moments that receive public attention, there is still room for simplicity and self-awareness. And with the social media algorithms moving on to newer topics and content cycles accelerating as always, the image of Suga in the park became less about the unknown person in the background and more about the known presence in the foreground, of an artist at ease in his own pace, navigating the world not to be seen, but to see, and in doing so, inviting others to reflect on how they, too, engage with their surroundings and digital spaces, not through constant stimulation but through presence, observation, and quiet participation. And that perhaps became the quiet resonance left by the episode. Not because it was remarkable in its eventfulness but precisely because it wasn't, because it reflected life as it is, unfiltered, momentary, and whole in its smallness. And as fans and casual followers alike moved on with a renewed appreciation for that kind of authenticity, the memory of that single shared image remained, not as a milestone in celebrity culture, but as a reminder of how even the most modest glimpses into someone's real life can create ripples of reflection, warmth, and shared understanding that extend far beyond what the image ever intended to say. By the time a week had passed since the initial post, Suga had not offered any further commentary, and the quietness that followed only deepened the impression that the moment had served its purpose without needing any form of continuation, with most fans and observers recognizing that the calm and measured way Suga let the moment exist on its own terms was reflective of a broader approach he has consistently taken throughout his career, choosing depth over noise and clarity over confusion. And during this time, no new photos surfaced and no media appearances were announced, reinforcing the idea that his presence in Los Angeles remained rooted in personal time rather than public obligation, and in the absence of updates, attention naturally shifted back toward his musical work, with fans revisiting his solo discography, analyzing lyrics, and discussing how his visual expression, even in a single casual photograph, often reflects themes that run through his artistry: solitude, reflection, distance, and presence, not as contradictions but as harmonizing elements. And in small forums, listeners began connecting the emotional tone of the now iconic park photo with tracks from his previous releases, discussing how his artistic identity seems to carry over into even the most unintentional visuals, creating a sense of coherence that feels less like branding and more like honest self-expression. And this period of low visibility did not weaken his public image but in fact strengthened the feeling of familiarity and trust within his core audience, as many expressed appreciation for the way he allows silence to speak and for how he does not manipulate moments for attention, a quality that feels increasingly rare in a culture dominated by urgency and constant engagement. And meanwhile, industry peers and journalists began referencing the photo in broader conversations about celebrity presence in digital spaces, using Suga's approach as an example of how authenticity can resonate without needing orchestration, performance, or emotional bait. And in one quiet corner of social media, a fan-initiated project began compiling a timeline of similar serene moments captured across Suga's public life, framing them not as fan service but as glimpses into a creative mind that thrives in observation, stillness, and detachment from spectacle. A collection that eventually grew into a digital archive of peacefulness and artistic quiet, shared among followers as a place to revisit during noisy times. And as the month progressed, Suga's absence from headlines did not create a vacuum, but rather a presence of another kind, the kind that is felt rather than seen, remembered rather than refreshed. And in that, many fans articulated how meaningful it was to feel close to an artist not through constant updates or dramatic gestures, but through the space he makes for others to find themselves within his silences. And perhaps this episode, which began with a simple park photo and a passing mention of a stranger in the background, ultimately became less about the unknown figure and more about the known essence of Suga himself, a man navigating the world without spectacle, acknowledging what catches his eye without magnifying it, and in doing so, reminding many that attention doesn't always have to be commanded. Sometimes it simply appears gently, in the spaces where someone has paused long enough to notice, and it is in that pause, in that noticing, that connection often happens. Not loudly, not permanently, but honestly. And for those who had followed the moment from beginning to end, the story closed not with resolution but with peace, the kind that doesn't require explanation and leaves behind only what is essential.